Let's do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X, _ Jonathan Smith. Follow me there. Follow us at Ticket1430 as well, or maybe you're listening on the app or on 1430 AM. There's so many different ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. That's kind of where it's at this point. And the Final Four, it is in town. We got games on Saturday, 2 days away. Can't wait for that. And, I didn't talk about it enough yesterday. First day back. Give me some grace, So that's where I want to start today. Illinois playing against UConn. And I wanted to start with this one because whenever I listen to other people discuss the Final Four, I feel like this game just gets pushed to the back burner because everyone else is just so excited and so amped up for Michigan versus Arizona, which a lot of people seem to think is the de facto national title game. And I'm actually really excited about Illinois and UConn because I get to watch one of my favorite players in all of college basketball this year play ball. I really enjoyed watching Illinois this year because of Keaton Wagler. He just reminds me so much of Tyrese Halliburton. I've heard people compare him to Kyle Anderson. If you don't know who that is, Kyle Anderson's nickname is Slow-Mo. And despite his nickname being Slow-Mo, he just finds a way to get wherever he wants to on the floor. And I think Keaton Wagler has a pretty similar game, especially when you compare him to Tyrese Halliburton. Big, or really tall, not big, like a tall, lengthy, skinny point guard who can step out and shoot it, and is also a tremendous passer. If you watched Tyrese Halliburton at Iowa State, if you watch him even, in the NBA whenever he comes back, he's not some crazy athlete, but he's got like a weird herky-jerky kind of style that works, and that's really only unique to him, and that allows him to get wherever he needs to on the floor. And Wagler has something similar. He's not some crazy athlete who's just blowing by dudes, but he's crafty enough, and the size and the length really helps with that he can still get wherever he needs to on the floor. He also rebounds incredibly well. It's so impressive. I just love watching that guy play basketball because of how impactful he is. I think the ultimate compliment you can give any athlete in pretty much any sport, but especially in basketball, are the guys who can impact the game without having to score. And a lot of freshmen in college basketball, I don't think that that's normally the case. The freshmen that we pay the most attention to, the freshmen that seem to have the largest impact on winning, are guys who can put the ball in the bucket. We're going to talk about that a little bit more whenever I talk about Arizona and Michigan, because there's some freshmen on that Arizona team who can really fill it up. But Wagler's a guy who obviously can score it, but his ability to impact the game in other ways is really impressive. Okay, and then Braylon Mullins, he's the other stud freshman in this game. Potential lottery pick, maybe. I wouldn't take him in the lottery, but that's, we can talk about that later, I guess. He's, he was supposed to be the stud freshman for UConn. And I'm really intrigued to see how he plays because that kid is due. Shows up to UConn, supposed to be a shooter, and he is 14 of 66 from three in his last 10 games. And he's coming off the Duke game where he hit the biggest shot of his life. And look, man, whenever you finally break through, I equate a lot of things to baseball because that's what I played for the longest amount of time. Like when you're going through a rough patch and then you hit a bomb, everything turns around for you because your confidence just goes up. And I think shooting is a pretty similar thing. And when you hit a shot like that in the Elite Eight to beat Duke, to go to the Final Four, your confidence is naturally going to go up. And I think he's going to have a really big game against Illinois. Just in terms of efficiency, I don't think this is a game where UConn fans are rolling their eyes at like, oh, like this guy's shooting again. He's 2 for 8. Like, come on, man. Like, let's go. So I'm really excited to watch those two freshman guards duke it out a little bit on the basketball court. I'm also excited about this game because my favorite player in the tournament, period, is playing. I'm going to say his name wrong. That's okay. Andrej, however you say it, Stojakovic, the son of Peja. And part of why older teams win in college basketball, part of why these, college basketball teams that turn their teams into, nightclubs, only 21 and up, part of why they win is because 21-year-olds who have played 2 years of college basketball, they're not only, bigger and stronger and more experienced in all those things, they also just know who they are. They have a better idea of what they're good at the college level compared to 18-year-olds. 18-year-old freshmen may think that they know what they're good at, but there's still a learning curve. Okay. And self-awareness is an incredibly important part of anything that people do. And Stojakovic has a ton of self-awareness on the basketball court, and it's why he's so impactful. Stojakovic is clearly 21 years old whenever he plays, because when he gets the basketball, I know what he's going to do. He's going to go to the rim because he's not a good shooter, and he's not going to settle for like tough contested step backs or anything like that. He knows he's a slasher. He knows he shoots, I think like less than 25% from three on the year. And every time he gets the ball, he just does the thing that he's good at, and that's attack the rim. Okay? And he's a good player because he only tries to do the things that he does well. I like Illinois to win the game. I ultimately think that they're going to get easier shots because UConn has really struggled to keep teams away from the rim in these, March Madness games so far. When you go back and you look at the Duke game, 25 of Duke's 48 shots were at the rim. 26 of Michigan State's 58 shots were at the rim. 24 of UCLA's 49 shots were at the rim against UConn. And every great offense starts with rim pressure, the ability to get to the basket. And every great defense has someone who can protect the rim, or they just don't allow you to get to the rim. Because when you can get to the rim and you can finish, everything else opens up. I think Stojakovic is going to have a really nice game against UConn because I don't think UConn has a guy who can stay in front of him. Now, I mentioned how, UConn hasn't done a very good job of containing the basketball. To be fair to them, it hasn't mattered yet because they just continue to win in spite of that. But I think that it will on Saturday because ultimately, teams that win basketball games are the teams that get easier shots. And this is an Illinois team that can really score it. This is a UConn team that can really score it. But ultimately, I think Illinois is going to have an easier time getting easier shots, especially because of how well they finish at the rim. Illinois shoots 63% from the floor at the rim this year, and I think that they're going to get there with relative ease, and they've also got a ton of shooting as well that they're going to have the ability to kick it out to. So they also have a lot of positional size. That's why I think that they're going to defend better than UConn is. They rebound really well. They beat Iowa because they just dominated the glass on both ends of the floor. So I think that they're going to get easier shots. I think they're going to finish possessions with rebounds better than UConn. I think they're going to get more second chance opportunities because of how they rebound. And they're ultimately going to send this UConn Huskies team home. The other game, the game that everyone's revved up and ready to go for, you got Michigan versus Arizona. And again, this is the game that everyone's looking forward to. This is the game where there's this expectation that whoever wins this game is going to go on to beat the winner of UConn and Illinois and win the national title. Of the Final Four teams, these are the two best. I think everyone's on the same page with that. I like Arizona to win the game, and I'll be honest, I'm a little biased. If you go and you look at my bracket, I picked Arizona to win the Natty before the tournament started. So with that being said, Michigan is obviously more than capable of beating them. The line's still a point and a half, so one bucket, one way or the other, is going to decide this game. But ultimately, I think that the difference is going to be guard play. Jaden Bradley for Arizona is never mentioned early enough when people talk about Arizona. Okay, they want to talk about Berries and Pete and the German kid whose name I can't pronounce and so on. Okay, Jaden Bradley is going to be why Arizona wins this game. Jaden Bradley is a senior point guard who's played a lot of basketball. He makes good decisions. He's a great defender. Just gets in a stance and it makes me smile. It just does. And most importantly, this is a guy who we have seen rise to the occasion consistently throughout not only this entire year, but really throughout his entire career. Like when the game is late and you need a bucket, this is a guy who can go and get that bucket for you. That is what Jaden Bradley does. And you're going to be at home watching Michigan and Arizona play this game. And you're going to be like, man, 3 minutes to go, tie ball game. What's going to happen? Jaden Bradley's going to happen. And he's going to close those final 3 minutes for Arizona. And he's going to hit a couple big shots that ultimately sends Michigan home. That is what he has done all year. Okay? And alongside him, you've just got a ton of studs. There's so many studs in this basketball game. We're going to have Zach Peerless on here in about 8 minutes or so to talk about this game. And, I think Braden Burries is the first guy who needs to be mentioned. 6'4", 205-pound freshman. I've noticed this throughout the tournament. I feel like the most successful freshmen in the tournament, with the exception of Wagler, have been these like thicker, kind of more physical players. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's a requirement to, be able to compete at a high level against, guys that are 24, 25, 26 years old. Okay. And Burry's best, skill, this is a guy who's going to be a top 10 draft pick. His best skill is his ability to put the ball in the bucket. He does it at every level. He's a legitimate 3-level scorer, shooting 40% from 3 on the year, 45% on pull-up twos. He's shooting 64% at the rim and 81% from the foul line. He is just a big-bodied scoring machine. Like the kid's an absolute stud. And I think that between Burries and Bradley, that backcourt is going to be the separator in this game. Okay? I think they're both better than their counterparts for Michigan. Elliot Cadeau, starting point guard for Michigan, the kid who had the allergic reaction yesterday before Michigan left for Indy. He's fine, by the way. Cadeau, he can really shoot it, but the dude's like 6'2". He's gonna look like David out there running around with a bunch of Goliaths. He's gonna be by far the smallest player on the floor in this game. And I'm so intrigued to see how he holds up defensively, where Michigan tries to put him. And then alongside him, you've got Nimari Burnett, who I think just kind of fits in for Michigan. Good shooter. Ball doesn't really stick with him. Only demands your attention when he gets hot. And Arizona is such a good defensive team. I don't see him having a night where he's, like 5 of 7 from 3, and he's just a flamethrower out there. So, as good as the Arizona guards are, as good as the Michigan guards are, because obviously, look, you're not making the Final Four if your guards aren't good. Like, they're just not as good as Arizona's guards. And as good as the Arizona guards are, the best player in this game plays for Michigan. Yaxel Lendenborg is just a stud. He's the best player in this game, and anytime you have the best player on the floor, you automatically have a shot. Anytime you have the best player, you immediately have a chance to win. And Lendenborg has just kind of gone to another level during the tournament. It's incredibly impressive. Okay, look, he's been a stud all year, right? You have to be in order to be named a first-team All-American like he was. He's done everything all year. Shoots 64% on two-pointers. He shoots 37% from 3. He's fast and elite in transition just because of the size and the athleticism. Like the dude's like 6'7", 220. Okay, he's also a great defender, and he finishes really well above the rim. He had 27 dunks on the year. So for Arizona, I'm excited to watch the guards. For Michigan, I'm excited to watch Lindenborg, and I'm really interested to see how Ivan. Ooh, Chris, I always struggle to say his name, man. Ivan
Sound it out, buddy.
Karchinov, or however you say it. The German kid for Arizona, who's 6'7", that guy. Really excited to see how he defends a guy in Lindenborg who, is a few years older. With that being said, Karchekinov, there it is. There it is. He's a big freshman, 6'7", 230. His athleticism really jumps off the screen whenever you watch him. But he's the kind of guy who you would want defending Lindenborg. Big, athletic, and he plays with a ton of energy. I have more thoughts on these games, but we got Zach Pirles, who's coming up here in about 3 minutes. He's got thoughts on the games as well. An excellent writer for CBS. He's going to join the show here in 3 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to, especially when I have a great guest joining the show, Zach Pirles of CBS Sports, who does a great job covering the NFL, does a great job covering college basketball. There he is. He looks so handsome. His office looks great as well. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I was super excited to get the text from you yesterday that we are going to be running this back. So yeah, excited to be back.
Yeah, I had like a 5-month hiatus where I went and worked at a bank, and it's a long story. We can talk about it later. But I want to start with you, man. So you were at the Duke and UConn game. You saw the biggest shining moment so far from the tournament. What was the reaction like? What was kind of going through your mind? Just kind of walk us through the final like 3 minutes of that game when UConn made the comeback against Duke.
Gosh, it was, I mean, those are the games that you dream of covering and seeing live. And it was just so much fun to be part of the atmosphere. Like, when you are able to cover these games, you sit courtside, but there are fans 5 feet from you, 3 feet from you, and right behind where I was sitting, there was like a contingent of like 4 Duke fans, and then a couple of UConn fans, and they were, giving each other some good-natured trash talk. I don't know if I'd even call it trash talk, back and forth. And then at the end of the game, you just see the 4 Duke fans just, surrender Cobra, arms on heads, and the 2 UConn fans are just screaming and like crying, hugging. It was unbelievable just to watch it get closer and closer and closer. And then I still don't think anyone could have seen the last 10 seconds coming, even as it got closer.
So I'll come clean. I turned it off. Like my wife and I we're hanging out. We're watching the game, and it looks like Duke's just going to run away with it. Again, joined by Zach Peerless of CBS Sports. Does a great job writing. You can follow him on X at Zach_Peerless, and you can read his stuff over at CBSSports.com. And it's like halftime, Duke's up by like 20. I'm like, Amelia, do you want to go get dinner? So we get dinner, we come back, we start watching our show, and I'm like, I should like check the score. And there's about 4 minutes left. And so I pulled it up on my phone because I'm smart enough to not tell Amelia, hey, we're actually going to pause this. We're going to put the game back on. And so that's what I was going as crazy as I could without trying to disrupt my wife. So it was that game was awesome. I don't think any moment has topped that so far. Maybe the TKR tip in, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel the same. And it's set up, I think, a really interesting matchup between Illinois and UConn. I think these are two teams that when I watch them at least, the offense is what jumps out. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game. What are you expecting in that matchup between Illinois and UConn?
Yeah, I could see a lot of points. I've been pretty high on Illinois all season long. I think that offense is just so good. Keaton Wagler, like, guy was outside the top 100 recruits. He has such a good, versatile game. The shooting is obviously one thing, but he will get into the lane, to the basket. You really saw it over the past couple of games. Even when he struggles a little bit from the outside or struggles at the rim, he has the opposite thing to go to. So, yeah, I could see a lot of points here. I love everything Illinois does offensively. They've got big guys who can shoot it. David Mirkovic, who's just he's kind of the glue. I don't want to call him a glue guy because he's so much better than that. But when you need a rebound, when you need a good pass, when you need a bucket, he can kind of do everything. So really enjoyed watching him play. And then UConn on the other side, what more can you say about them? They just win in March all the time. I think, when they get this deep in the tournament, they don't lose. So really, really fun matchup. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to both of these games.
The UConn thing is interesting. So like you said, they just don't lose in March, and they're, I think, 32-5 on the year, something like that. And I had Aaron Torres on yesterday, and we were talking about how it feels like they've overachieved, even though they're 32-5. What do you think it is about UConn that allows them to just continue to kind of find a way when it gets to late February and March?
They are extremely well coached, and I know that Dan Hurley can be grating, and I know that he can get into it with the refs and things like that. They are so well coached, X's and O's wise, that especially late in the year when they've started to see kind of some of those Big East teams twice or even 3 times, they've really got great game plans. And then on the other side, when teams are not as familiar with you and you're not as familiar with the teams, you've got to be able to prepare really well in 2 days or in 3 days or in 5 days when you're moving from one weekend to the next. And I think that Hurley does as good a job as anyone. He also does a great job of just getting his players to play well. Like Terrace Reed Jr. is a guy who was pretty up and down all season long. There were times where he was not playing a ton, and the minutes were kind of more split in that front court. And now he's been, he just won the most outstanding player of the East Regional. So to go from that to where he is now, he was so good against Duke and against Michigan State. But just their ability to develop guys, their ability to prepare well. And the last thing I will say is they are experienced. They have guys who've been there. Alex Caravan, already 2 national titles, now going to another Final Four. So you get great coaching. You get really good players who get better throughout the year. And then, of course, you have that championship experience.
Joined by Zach Peerlez of CBS Sports. Does a great job writing and covering college basketball, the NFL, and whatever else that they ask him to cover there over at CBS Sports. You can read all the stuff over at cbssports.com. I wanted to lead with Illinois and UConn because I've fallen into this habit of just wanting to ignore that game because I'm so excited for Arizona and Michigan. I feel like whoever wins this game goes on to win the national title. That's not a hot take. I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of feel about those two teams coming into the Final Four?
I do think that the winner of that game will be the champion. I don't want to sit here and say it'll be a runaway game. I don't want to sit here and say it's a guarantee, but I do think they're the 2 best teams left. And I love everything about this matchup. You think about the big men in this game are just awesome. Like Adai Mera at Michigan has been one of my favorite developmental stories this season. I remember back in October, I talked to Trey McKenney, one of the freshmen at Michigan, and I said, give me a guy who is maybe going to surprise some people. And he said Adai Mera, and my goodness, is he good. And then obviously you have one of the top 3, at least top 5 players in the sport this year, and Yaxel Lendeberg, who's awesome. Like, just can get it going. Will put guys on posters, can shoot the 3. And then on the other side, you have an Arizona team that is just so good on the glass. Krivas is just one of my favorite players to watch. The leap that he has made year over year, the guy is an absolute beast. Like, I don't know how else to say it. He gets rebounds. He defends the basket. He scores down low. Just like, I don't think there have been really great games in the Final Four. I think this is up there among the most recent, most anticipated games. So going to be a lot of fun. Both of these teams have just been destroying everything in their path so far this tournament.
Yeah, destroying. I don't even know if that word does it justice. Like, yeah. Arizona, they're playing Arkansas, and Arkansas was like this trendy pick to like make a Final Four run. And from the jump, you're just like, yeah, this game's not going to be close. And then, Purdue has a really nice first half where they shoot 50% from 3 and they're only up by 7. And then Arizona just walks them down. And then Michigan's just, they've done the same thing. They've crushed everybody. And my favorite thing when watching these two teams is, being in Indiana, like, this is big man basketball country with Purdue, and like looking at Krivas and Mara and just being like, we're 3 years removed from Zach Edey. And it's like, those guys are so much better than he was. Just the evolution of the big man in college basketball is a really big part of why both of these teams are as good as they are. And that is what leads me to picking Arizona. I think both of these teams in the front court are really good. I just like the guards for Arizona a little bit more. What do you kind of make of the backcourt matchup between these two teams?
Yeah, I think Elliot Cadeau is probably the X factor here. When Michigan kind of had, it's hard to say that they had some tough times down the stretch because what do they have? Like 3 or 4 losses all season. When they have struggled even a little bit more than normal, it's because Cadeau has struggled. And obviously there was some news yesterday that he had an allergic reaction and didn't travel with the team. And it's only Thursday. You know, if he's better today, I'm not really worried about that. But I do think at that point guard spot, I just absolutely love Jaden Bradley. I don't know if he was he was the Big 12 player of the year, which was probably a surprise a little bit, but that guy makes so many difficult shots. He beat Iowa State in the Big 12 championship with an amazing buzzer beater. Like, that is just a awesome, awesome, awesome matchup there. I love Jaden Bradley, the toughness he brings, the defense he brings. It's so interesting to me that Arizona has all of these, big runs during games despite not shooting a ton of threes. Is really, really interesting. It's because their defense can just say, hey, we're going to give you nothing for 5 straight minutes, and we're just going to hammer you inside with layups and offensive rebounds. And then when we need it, Braden Berries can knock it down as well as anybody. So really, really good. I do think that I agree with you. I think Arizona's backcourt is a little bit better. Karchenkov is such a good defender. So really this is the most anticipated Final Four matchup that I can remember in terms of two teams that are just absolutely so dominant, hard to really find like a real hole in either team's game. There have been some really good ones. Obviously, Duke Houston last year comes to mind. And you know what? Maybe this game ends up not quite living up to the excitement. Maybe it's one of these games where Cadeau just doesn't have his best game and Arizona wins by 10. Or Michigan is just like, we have the best front court in America and we win by 10, even though Arizona has such a good front court. So, I don't want to say this is going to be the best game ever because there are so many different factors. But really excited, like just such a fun, good matchup between two teams that are well coached, well-rounded. They don't do anything poorly.
They don't, and that's why people are excited for the game. Joined by Zach Pirles of CBS Sports, does a great job covering college basketball and the NFL over at CBSSports.com. You can follow him on X at Zach_Pirles. So last thing before I let you go, you've got 1,000 books behind you. Have you read all of those, or are they just like strictly for show?
That's a great question. I've read a lot of them. My wife and I are big readers. Okay. So there's a lot of sports books behind me. There's a lot of nonfiction that's not sports. There's a lot of fiction. But yeah, we're big readers. So I haven't read all of them, but one day I'll get through all of them.
Okay, sounds good. Last thing, I like Arizona and Illinois to win. Who are your official picks for the game?
Yeah, I'm going Illinois in that first game. Second one, I picked Arizona to win it all, and I'm not a guy who likes to change. And obviously, Arizona has not done anything to say we're not going to win. So let's roll with Arizona there. But yeah, like I love college basketball, and a game like that is just about as good as it gets.
It is, man. I'm excited for it. It's here in Indy. It's going to be a great time. Zach, thank you so much for taking 15 minutes out of your day to come on and talk hoops, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you're back.
Thank you. See you, buddy.
See you.
That is Zach Pirles. Again, you can read all of his stuff over at CBSSports.com. Does a great job covering college basketball. Writes a lot about the NFL as well. Whenever we kind of get to that time of the year, if the Colts have a joint practice with the Commanders or Ravens again this year, we'll have him on again because he's at all of those. So once again, thank you to Zach. At 1:20, the hoops just doesn't really end today. We got Tony East, who's going to come on at 1:20 to talk a little Pacers and a little bit of NBA. It won't be too much, I promise, but the NBA season does end in like a week and a half. So playoffs are right around the corner. So we'll have Tony East on to talk Pacers and a little bit of the NBA coming up at 1:20. But it's a lot of Final Four today, and which is great. We love hoops here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, and we'll be back in 3 minutes with more stuff on the Final Four.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe it's __ Jonathan Smith. If you want to watch the show on X, 1430 AM, the Indy Sports Ticket app. Anyway you're listening, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I was telling Chris, this is going to sound really weird, I love the Urology of Indiana ad, because when I first started work, so Cumulus has hired me 3 different times now, which is kind of nuts. And the first time they hired me, they had a 21-year-old doing an ad read for vasectomies, because I'm sure that's, it's the perfect age to have someone talk about vasectomies. And so now, whenever Amelia and I are driving around the city, if we drive by a Urology of Indiana, every time, without fail, I look at her and I say, that's the first ad read I ever did. And she's like, Jonathan, I know, because we've been married for 3 years now. And, when you do it every time for 3 years, it gets a little annoying, I guess.
You're proud, though. You're proud.
So proud.
Yeah.
So proud. I'll do more ad reads for Urology of Indiana if they want me to. That's fine.
Tell the wife to let you have your flowers, man.
Yeah.
Just let it be.
Seriously. So, I guess there are some people who still may not know. The Dan Dockett show ended on Tuesday. It is the Real Jonathan Smith Show going forward. With that being said, we'll have Dan Dockett on the show tomorrow. So he's coming on at 12:30, I think. I think that's the plan. So, Anyway, Final Four continues tonight, I guess. Starts tonight. We have the NIT going on. Chris, do you watch the NIT? You're allowed to say no, by the way, because a lot of people don't.
No.
Okay. Hey, man.
But I have watched it this year. I will say that for Andrew's team.
Yes.
The Fighting Dockaches of Illinois State. So,
that's right.
Yeah, man. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of interest there. But, yeah, I'm pulling for Illinois State.
Yeah,
sure.
That's why I'm watching.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I've been tracking it. I'll actually sit down and really watch it tonight for, like you said, the Fighting Dockaches of Illinois State. So, that is happening tonight. It's happening at Hinkle. I'm so glad that they do it at Hinkle, because I just think that, look, in Indiana, it's the basketball capital, or at least the college basketball capital of the world. I mean, we just do it better than anybody else. Every, Sweet 16 that I've gone to here, every Elite 8 game, whatever it's been, it's just on another level. It's presented so well. And so I think it's only right to have every major tournament end here in Indy. Like, we should really host the Final Four every year, as far as I'm concerned. But that is going to start Saturday. I believe the early game is Illinois and UConn, and then the late game, Michigan versus Arizona. And I'm so excited for these two games, because I think that I love it when games are strength on strength. And, like, when you look at what Illinois does well, and when you look at what UConn does well, like, it's the offense. Like, that is the clear thing that has led them to this point. The motion offense that Dan Hurley runs is it's a staple at this point. Illinois runs a beautiful offense as well, and I'm just excited to watch these two great offenses go head-to-head. Whenever you look at, Arizona and Michigan, I've talked about it before. It's going to be a major talking point, I think, everywhere. Arizona, highly physical, right? I think that is the strength of their team. That is the thing that kind of jumps off the screen whenever you watch them play. Michigan, very large, very physical as well. Watching these two, it's going to be like watching, two bulls, like, charge into each other time and time again. Ridger over in the YouTube app point out that Michigan's Elliot Cadeau is in the Indianapolis hospital after an allergic reaction to food. I'm pretty sure he's okay. I thought I saw a clip of, Coach Dusty May talking about him this morning. I think he's going to be fine for the game on Saturday, which is ultimately the important thing, right? So, So I'm excited for the Final Four for those reasons, and I'm also really intrigued by the development of Mara, the center for Michigan who transferred in from UCLA this offseason, and Krivas, who's the big 7'2" junior from Lithuania, because it's just proof that things evolve and improve over time. This may be blasphemy here in Indiana, but watching those guys and comparing them to Zach Edey when Zach Edey was playing for Purdue, it borderline doesn't look like the same sport, and that was like 3 years ago. Edey, his game was very obvious. He was gonna take 2 dribbles, be at the rim, and then turn over his left shoulder and make a right-handed hook shot, or he'd dunk it. He would do one or the other. Whereas with Mara and Krivas, I just think there's a little more, let's call it elegance to their game. Like especially Mara, man, like the way that he passes the basketball, the way that Michigan really runs their offense through him. I don't like comparing anyone to Nikola Jokic, but it's like Jokic-ish. It's like Jokic adjacent, the ability to pass the ball and set screens and make plays out of the short roll. It's a lot of fun to watch. So I'm excited to watch the front courts in that game. Koa Pete is like quickly become one of my favorite players to watch in the tournament. Just like a big 6'8" battering ram who with a nice little foul line jumper. Love that. So there's just so much talent and ability in this game between Michigan and Arizona. And yeah, like I said, I'm really excited. And I think from what I've seen, which I'm not seeing everything, so maybe this is wrong. If you are of a different opinion, you can call 317-228-1430. Phone lines are open as always if you want to give me your thoughts on the Final Four. I feel like a lot of people are taking Arizona, which should tell you to bet Michigan, because that's usually how these things go. And I think that the 2 areas, or really 3 areas, where Michigan has a real advantage, and if they win the game, I think it's going to be because of one of these 3 things. One being Yaxel Lindenborg, the best player on the floor in this game. I think Michigan has a real advantage on their bench. I just think they have a little bit more scoring. I think that they've just got a little bit more depth, okay, which is a crazy thing to say because Arizona has a ton of depth as well. But like the Michigan trio of Trey McKinney and Roddy Gale Jr. and Will, Tschetter. Doing my best here. They all just do their jobs, and they do exactly what is asked of them. Like McKinney can really fill it up. Gale can guard, does a great job of attacking the basket. It's Cheddar. That's it. I'm dumb. Anyway, he can space the floor, competes really well. I like the depth of Michigan, and I also like the fact that Michigan shoots more threes. Okay, Arizona can shoot it. They just prefer not to. Okay, but again, they can shoot it. There's a very big difference between can't shoot and chooses not to shoot. Okay, Arizona has multiple guys on their roster who are shooting like 40% from 3. They just don't take very many of them, right? So that's kind of the issue there. And like we could look up, Michigan could make 5 more threes than Arizona and win the game because of that. Now, in order to do that, they'd also have to keep Arizona off the glass and keep them off the foul line. That's how Arizona kind of makes up for not taking as many threes and making as many. They get fouled and they offensive rebound. I'm just not convinced that Michigan's going to be able to do that. That's why I'm taking Arizona. But there is, 1,000% a path for Michigan to win that game. John, what's going on, man?
How are you?
I'm doing good, John. How are you, man?
Good. Hey, what a wonderful Final Four. We got 4 really good teams. I mean, you could make a case for any of them to win. I actually have 3 of the Final Four. I got Illinois and Michigan in the finals. I had Arizona making it, and I had St. John's coming out of the other bracket. But I don't think I've ever had picked 3 out of the 4 like this. But I just remember, Michigan's been good all year. Obviously, early in the year, before Christmas, they were beating everybody by like 30 points. And then Illinois, I saw them play a few times, and they just look so mature and comfortable, and they play they're big too. So I think they got a good shot at winning it. But yeah, it's just a really good looking Final Four.
It is. And, I think part of why it looks so good. Thanks for the call, John. I think part of why it looks so good is because of the NIL. And like, I know that we've said that NIL is going to ruin sports. I don't think NIL is the problem. I think the transfer portal is the problem. That's beside the point. Is you've got guys who I'm trying to think of a guy. Gosh dang it, what's his name? It's going to bother me now. But you've got guys who, like after their sophomore years that are playing in the Final Four, like could have potentially left, a few years ago because they would have been like a second round draft pick and, they would have had a shot at an NBA career. And now guys like, what's his name? Alex Caravan. That's who I'm thinking of. I think he's a great example of, he's a senior this year playing in his third Final Four. Whereas I think, 2 years ago, or, if we go back, 5 years pre-NIL, Alex Caravan is a guy who has a really good sophomore year. He probably could have come out and been like a second round draft pick and then flamed out of the NBA at some point. But now he is incentivized to stay in college for a full 4 years and play for Dan Hurley for 4 years and build a relationship with the UConn fan base and the college basketball fan base as a whole. And that has led, and I don't think he's the only guy like that. I think there's other guys in the Final Four and in college basketball who have done a similar thing. And that has just led to an overall better product as a whole. And so I think that the NIL is a large part of why the Final Four looks so good. The other thing, as a guy who loves the NBA, and we're going to have Tony East on at about 1:20. We'll talk about the Pacers. We'll talk about, the NBA playoffs, which are, right around the corner. As a guy who loves the NBA, the game looks more in terms of the physicality and the bodies that you see on the floor. It looks more like an NBA game, and you get more NBA skill kind of guys just because, 5 years ago, guys that are 20 were trying to go play in the league. Now they're staying in college. And so the overall level of play is just better because of that. And the other thing that I notice whenever I look at these four teams, just the sheer amount of size, like it's, 10 years ago, which is crazy. Steph Curry and the Warriors take the world by storm. And everyone's like, oh, small ball. Let's just be as small as possible and shoot a bunch of threes. And now teams are like, let's be as big as possible and shoot a bunch of threes. And it has led to, I think, an overall better product on the basketball court. So I'm excited. Chris, I know that you're pumped as well. If you could go to one thing, like what is the one thing with the upcoming Final Four that you were the most excited about? Are you excited about like the free concerts, or is there like a part of any of the games that you're just really looking forward to this weekend?
I would probably say the games because of the atmosphere, and that's saying a lot because I'm a huge music fan, right? And love 21 Pilots. They're going to be here tomorrow, headlining downtown American Legion Mall downtown. And then Sunday, you have Post Malone. I think late Saturday night, Indiana Roof Ballroom, you got the Chainsmokers. So lots of music going on this weekend. But the games themselves, that atmosphere is once in a lifetime for a lot of people. I think I would go for that.
I think one of the cool things about the Final Four this year, Michigan's not that far away. Illinois is not that far away. UConn fans are nuts. They'll be here. And then, Arizona fans, they're out on the West Coast. They don't really care. You're probably not going to see nearly as many, Arizona fans as you will the other two. But the fact that we've got, three really passionate fan bases in the Final Four, I think is going to make it even better than it was already going to be. My one complaint, can we just play it at Gainbridge? Like, I don't want to play it at Lucas Oil. The seats, I don't think are as good. Like if you're sitting, I don't know, I'm assuming you've been to a concert or a game at Gainbridge.
Yeah.
You can sit in the nosebleeds and have great seats. When I first moved here, I'd have like a 20 spare dollars occasionally. and I would spend it to go watch the Pacers lose because they were bad when I first showed up. And I'd sit up top, and it was awesome. I'll never forget. I thought that there was going to be a fight in my row. I go, oh, dude, this is crazy. So this is like right after COVID. The Pacers are playing the Nets, and it's not just the Nets. It's the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden Nets.
Okay.
It's like one of the 4 games where all 3 of them actually played together. So I was like, I have to go see this. So I spent, like $25
Sure.
to watch KD score 40. And there was an older gentleman. I don't know if I should call him a gentleman. There's an older guy behind me who is yelling at the top of his lungs. You were right, Kyrie, about all the vaccine
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
And there's like this 23-year-old idiot to my left who keeps turning around and like egging him on and like insulting him, all sorts of stuff. And then, the older gentleman's like, do you want to go? And the 23-year-old's like, you don't want to fight me. This would end horribly for you. And look, I'm like 5'8", maybe. This 23, he was smaller than I was. This other dude's like 6'3" or whatever. It was,
So
and-
you got your money's worth.
Oh yeah. I got like a front row seat to a UFC fight, and I also got to watch Kevin Durant score the easiest 40 I had ever seen. So, yeah, man, play the games at Gamebridge. I just feel like the atmosphere would be a little bit better. I get that you can't sell as many tickets. I don't care about that.
No, you're absolutely right. I think going to Lucas Oil, sitting up in section, 630, whatever, takes away a lot of the feeling and experience to going to something like that. I get the point, but yeah, I would rather watch it on TV than sit up in the nosebleeds
That's
at
exactly
Lucas Oil
right.
Stadium compared to Gamebridge.
That's exactly right. I completely agree. That is a great note to end this first hour on. Here in about 4 minutes, Chris Ballard did an interview with the great Kay Adams. That is sarcasm. And we've got that audio for you when we come back in 4 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X_Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're listening, on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. There's so many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. So, Final Four is going on this weekend, but the genius, Chris Ballard, had things to say to Kay Adams earlier this week. They had the owners meeting out in Arizona. So, she had the opportunity to sit down with, all these different guys with all these different GMs. And of course, she had to sit down with the media darling that is Chris Ballard and ask him, just kind of about some of the different signings so far from this offseason. And when Alec Pierce signed his contract with the Indianapolis Colts, he became the highest paid free agent wide receiver in NFL history. Now, that's not a super big deal because some contract record seems to get broken every single year because every single year the cap goes up, which then allows you to pay, quarterbacks more money and all those things, right? And because the cap goes up, all these new records get set. What is a big deal is a wide receiver like Alec Pierce, who really only does two things well. He wins down the field on go routes, and he does a nice job running like those deeper over-the-middle routes. He only does two things well, and he's being paid more than Davante Adams, more than Chris Godwin, more than Cortland Sutton, more than Nico Collins, the best wide receiver in the AFC South, more than Devontae Smith, and Jameson Williams. I don't think Alec Pierce is better than any of those guys. And Chris Ballard was asked about the Daniel Jones connection with Alec Pierce, and he also, gave a bit of a justification for paying Alec Pierce so much money. Here is Colts GM Chris Ballard. Ballard right there talking about Alec Pierce, just how proud he is of the young wide receiver that, he paid a lot of money to. And, in that clip, he mentions the relationship with Daniel Jones and how just uncanny it was for Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones to get on the same page so quickly, which I just think it's a load of hooey, really. Because, when you look at the Colts, Alec Pierce, again, I think he only does two things well, okay? And they're the two things that the rest of that Colts receiver room and pass catching room didn't do well. And that's win down the field, on go balls and run those deep overs and deep post routes. Michael Pittman Jr. wasn't good at doing that. Josh Downs didn't really have the size to do that and make those contested catches. They didn't really use Tyler Warren in that way. So, of course, they built rapport quickly. He was the only option to push the ball down the field. Okay? Now, to Alec Pierce's credit, he was by far, he wasn't only the Colts' best down the field threat, he was one of the best down the field threats in football. Okay? But again, when you're the only guy on the roster who does something, then of course you're going to have the opportunity to do those things. The issue that I have with the resigning is we are yet to see Alec Pierce be productive and impact the game in ways that are, like less than 10 yards down the field. Like, is he really a number one wide receiver who can do more than just two things? Explosive plays are incredibly important in, the current landscape of the NFL. It's really hard to go, 12 plays, 75 yards, averaging like 7 yards a play. That's really hard to do, to just dink and dunk your way the whole way down the field. Because in order to do that, you have to execute perfectly, 12 times in a row. And you have to avoid penalties. You also have to avoid, the opposing defense that's filled with pros from making incredible plays. Okay? And so explosive plays are important, but you have to be able to take what the defense gives you sometimes. And I just don't think that Alec Pierce runs those routes. And I don't know if he's capable of running those routes. And I just think that when you're the 12th highest paid receiver in the NFL, I just think that when you're if you're going to sign a receiver to the, highest contract that a free agent wide receiver has ever received, I just think that you need to be able to run the whole route tree. Alec Pierce, kind of, not fully, kind of reminds me of DK Metcalf, who the Steelers paid a boatload of money, 5th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL right now. The Steelers paid him a boatload of money. He does like two things well. He wins deep, and he runs like those deep over routes. And I just don't think that worked out great for Pittsburgh. And I do think that there's a very realistic scenario where we get something similar with Alec Pierce, where every time he makes a play down the field, someone makes a comment like, see, that's why they paid him all that money. And then we just, completely ignore it when he only has like 4 receptions. He had 43 receptions last year. I get it. He went for over 1,000 yards on the year. That's just because, again, really only went deep. I just wish he could do a little bit more than only win down the field. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Here's where if you wanted to go glass half full, I think this is where it starts. There is a lot of hope for Alec Pierce to become someone who is worthy of this contract. And we've already seen the proof behind that. Alec Pierce's first 2 years with the Colts were not good. Wasn't good at all. It was very underwhelming. Despite the quarterback issues, he just didn't look like a guy worthy of being a second-round pick. So much so that they went and they drafted Adonai Mitchell. And to Alec Pierce's credit, and if Chris Ballard had come out and said this, I would feel better about the signing. To Alec Pierce's credit, he worked his butt off and became a good player. Like the last 2 years, he has turned himself into a really good player to a point where he reportedly had other options in free agency. Okay, he has shown that he works on his craft. He has shown that he improves and that he knows how to improve and work on his game. Some players, a lot of players, get to the NFL and they plateau. They make it and they're like, cool, I'm good. They don't work hard enough or, whatever it ends up being. And in Alec Pierce's short time here in Indy, I think that he has shown that he is a guy who has added to his game. Okay, and I hope that he continues to do that because I think he's going to need to add to his game to justify this big contract. He's also clearly the Colts' best wide receiver as of right now. So he's going to get a ton of targets, asking him to do more than just run those deep overs and those go routes. Okay, Chris Ballard also spoke on the Daniel Jones deal. And this is just another reason why this Alec Pierce deal could go a little sour, because I don't like the quarterback situation here in Indianapolis. And Chris Ballard was asked about the re-signing of Daniel Jones. Here's what the Colts general manager had to say about bringing Daniel Jones back. So, Chris Ballard. If you're watching on the stream, you weren't able to hear it. Sadly, we'll get that fixed here at some point. It's only day 2 of the show, people. All right, we'll get it fixed. All right.
Need you to lower your expectations.
Yeah. We need your expectations on the floor so that we can succeed, so we can exceed them in the biggest way possible. So, Chris Ballard's, he starts off by doing his little, arrogant thing where he's like, "Well, I don't really give a I'm not gonna cuss on your show." Which, whatever. He said he doesn't care about what other people think. And I just think that's insane. He should absolutely care what other people think because he has repeatedly gotten the quarterback position wrong over the last decade. And personally, I don't like the idea of betting on a guy that has now had an ACL tear at one point during his career and an Achilles tear. That doesn't exactly scream durability. Let's also mention that the best year of the best year of Daniel Jones's career ended with an Achilles tear. I'm just not a Daniel Jones believer. I don't know if anything is going to turn me. Okay, like he played well against a lot of bad teams. All right, they played 6 games last year against teams that made the playoffs. Okay, Daniel Jones went 2-3 in those games, 2-4 if you want to count the Jaguars game where he got hurt and only attempted 7 passes. I'm not going to count it because I'm a nice guy. All right, so he went 2-3 against playoff teams. He played well in 2 of them, and the more games he played, the worse he got. Whenever I say that, one of the immediate reactions I get is that people are like, he was hurt. Of course he didn't play well. He was playing hurt. Let me just ask you a question. Have you paid attention to his entire career? He's almost always hurt. And guess what? It's the NFL. Everyone is playing hurt after week 4. And this is a guy that could make up to $50 million a year over the next 2 years playing for the Colts. And to me, like, that's just insane. To pay a guy that much who's won a playoff game and a guy who has been banged up and hurt time and time again in his career. I don't know what it is about Chris Ballard, but he just loves himself a quarterback with some injury history. Daniel Jones had, the ACL before the Colts signed him, had a real problem with staying durable. Carson Wentz had an injury history before Chris Ballard signed him. Anthony Richardson had an injury history before he got drafted. Andrew Luck had a tendency to get hurt. I know that he's not the one who drafted him, but, Andrew Luck ended up retiring because of Chris Ballard. So we're going to throw that on his resume as well. Okay. It doesn't make sense from an outside perspective. If you're inside the building, it does make sense because the Colts' ultimate goal, it's to stay mediocre and to stay employed just a little bit longer. That is the Chris Ballard way. It's been that ever since he got here. And, the Colts have paid for it every single season since he showed up. 10 years. They haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. Haven't hosted a home playoff game in a decade. Just incredible. And we're supposed to believe that Daniel Jones is going to be the guy who makes that happen for us a year where he's coming off of tearing his Achilles. Yeah, right. Anyway. While the Colts continue to be mediocre, the Indiana Pacers have some hope. Tyrese Halliburton sadly tore his Achilles, so he was out this year. It's been a rough year for the Indiana Pacers, but looking ahead to next year looks kind of nice. I'm really excited for Pacers basketball next year. I'm excited for the NBA playoffs, which are right around the corner. The draft isn't really all that far away either. And we're going to have Tony East, who does a great job covering the Pacers. He's going to join the show here in about 3 minutes to talk about the Pacers season as a whole. And we're also going to get a little bit, not too much, but a little bit into the upcoming NBA playoffs. So Tony East joins the show when we come back in about 4 minutes.
highlights in today's sports world. It's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, X, the Indy Sports Ticket app, 1430 AM. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. And we are now joined by a guy who's going to be a staple of the show, the one and only Tony East. What's going on, Tony? How are you?
Welcome back to the airwaves, man. Good to hear from you. I'm great.
Dude, hey, that's good to hear, man. It's good to hear from you, too. For those who don't know, Tony East is the best reporter and writer on the Pacers beat. He writes about the Pacers over at Forbes.com. You're still covering the Fever, too, as well, right?
Yep.
Writing over at, the Circle City Spin, the 9 Sports, Locked On Pacers as well. Just all over the place is Tony East. And how's it been covering the Pacers this year?
People ask me that a lot, right? So it's kind of interesting because obviously it's a lot different because they were good last year. And in some ways it's challenging because no one is that as interested, right? They're worse. Everybody knows what's going on. They're not playing for anything. But it's different than normal bad years because there's like some expectation from everybody that it's supposed to be just this year, right? And so normally these years are very hard on guys and they're ready to run out the rope by the end of the year. But there's actually a lot of, as you can see, they've won 3 of 5, like decently inspired and kind of into it players. And so, it's not as painful because they were so great last year and expect to be good again next year.
49 assists last night.
Crazy.
Insane.
Crazy.
Insane. And
so what's wild? I went back and looked at the game when they had 50 assists, which is their franchise record. And in that game, Halliburton had 18 assists and TJ McConnell had 10. Nobody had more than 7 last night. I mean, it was crazy.
That is nuts. Joined by Tony East. You can follow him on X at Tony R. East. Does a great job of covering the Pacers. He'll cover the Fever as well whenever their season starts going. And, Tony, being away from radio for too long, it was really weird, man, because, things would happen. I was like, man, I just wish I could have someone on the air to talk to for 20 straight minutes about the Zubac trade. And I know that Zubac hasn't played a ton. He's been dealing with some injury stuff, but we have seen him a little bit. What were kind of your thoughts on the trade when it happened, and have those thoughts changed at all as you've kind of seen him around the team and those things?
Yeah, I actually predicted the exact trade price for him if he was the guy. So I felt good about what they gave up. If I knew it would have one of the 2 firsts, I just said 2 firsts, generically. If I knew it would have been weirdly protected this year, would I have said that? Maybe not. That's a little ambitious, obviously. But the thing about that is now that I've come to understand the draft a little more, I haven't watched everybody yet, is what do the Pacers who have Halliburton and Nembhard, what do they care about? Maybe these guys will be good, but Acuff, Wagler, and those they're not going to play. They wouldn't play here, right? So 5 through 7 is not as important to them. So I understand the price. I think Zubac is very good. I mean, he was amazing with the Clippers. He was 18th in All-NBA voting last year. So he was 3 spots off of being an All-NBA player last season. And his defense, he just plugs so many holes for the Pacers with his strengths, right? The theory of him is that he'll be an A-tier defensive player at the 5, a great rebounder, and then add a new element for them on offense where he's actually a bruiser in the post and a great screener that they haven't had since Sabonis. And so I think that is a good idea, a good player, and his contract fits their structure very well. Now, there will be some questions about how his strengths perfectly mesh with what they do, right? It's not that he can't shoot, doesn't make them, it's that he doesn't shoot. He's taken 12 threes in his entire career, and they've had a lot of success with spacing bigs, right? Thomas Bryant, Miles Turner, Jalen Smith, etc. They've had other bigs who don't shoot, but so that'll be a thing. Zubac's passing impressed me more than I thought it would in the 5 games he played, which is good because that's something that's going to be asked of him a lot, being a center on this team. His screening was awesome, but his rebounding was actually a little worse than I thought. And so I'll be curious how the tempo fit is when Halliburton's playing. I don't really have a lot of questions about that, but I do have questions about, their defensive scheme, how he'll fit and all that when he is asked to move around and play a little bit more. It's a bummer he can't get a little bit of time in with Siakam this year, but I'm confident he'll be very good for them. It maybe might take 10 games for it to be, as good of a fit as it can be next year, just because he's hurt now.
Joined by Tony East. Follow him on X at Tony R. East. Does a great job covering both the Pacers and the Fever. And that's kind of my question. Like, I feel like defensively, I've got a decent idea on how he's going to fit in. Like you said, should be like an A-tier defender, a guy who can really, block shots and protect the rim and do those things. But the offense, it's a little easier. I don't know if easier is the right word. It just looks different when you have a center like Miles Turner or Jalen Smith, who can stand, 30 feet away from the basket and make shots, whereas that's not what Zubac does. But then again, when you have Tyrese Halliburton, I just kind of think everything's going to be okay.
What's funny is Tyrese before Miles would always say, because he came from Sacramento, where a lot of times he played with Rashawn Holmes. I don't know how many people remember Rashawn Holmes and his goofy little floater, but he said for a while that he always thought that the best possible pick and roll partner for him was a guy like that, who was a good screener and then could have this funky little shot he makes from 8 feet away. So that defenses actually have to cover him when he starts throwing towards the basket. And then he realized that Turner's shooting was super helpful. So he kind of changed his mind on what the perfect partner is. I only bring that up to say that we've seen Tyrese Halliburton play with a really good screener who can make kind of goofy shots in the lane. And so I don't think that it will be hard for Zubac and Halliburton specifically to link up in actions. It'll just be like the totality of playing random Pacers basketball like they played last night requires centers to move a lot and set a lot of screens and swing the ball side to side and things like that. It took Jay Huff a little bit to figure out what was needed of him, right? How long is that going to take Zubac? But yeah, I have no doubts that he'll actually fit once he gets time in the system and things of that nature.
Joined by Tony East, who does a great job covering the Pacers. Follow him on X at Tony R. East. You can check out his podcast as well, Locked On Pacers. So for me, when the year started, I was like, what is the thing that I'm going to kind of pay attention to with the Pacers, knowing that chances are they're not going to be great. And for me, I was like, you know what? I talked a lot about Jarace Walker. I really liked him coming out of Houston. I don't know if you liked him as much as I did, but I knew that you were at least intrigued by him. Now we've kind of seen a full season where he's getting consistent minutes and those things. What is kind of your stance? Where are you at with Jarace Walker after kind of seeing him for a full year?
I hope he can play again after he got rocked in a couple games ago and has his back injury now, because it'd be a huge bummer that, to me, the things I was most excited about once they were fully eliminated from the playoffs was seeing Zubac and Siakam together. That's not happening. And then seeing Jarace Walker the rest of the season, which has barely happened since. So that's been kind of cruel. As it comes to Walker's full season, it's been so interesting that he started just horrible, right? Like nightmarish start to the season, ton of turnover. They had that 4-game road trip out west where they got blasted by 30 plus every game. And he had more turnovers than made shots on the road trip. He could not make anything. His turnover problem was crazy. He looked so floaty. And so maybe the only good thing for Jarace Walker that came out of this super injured season for the Pacers is that because they were so hurt all the time is he kept getting to play when he was playing like that. It was awful, very concerning how bad he started the season. And then from, let's say, Thanksgiving to mid-January, he still had some issues, but he just was making every three-pointer, right? And that was huge because it kept him on the floor that he made shots. And so then when they got healthy, they kept playing Jarace Walker, and that was crucial because now he's kind of having what I would call his third little season of the season where he's doing everything. His rebounding looks way better. His shot looks good. He's actually driving toward the rim and creating offense himself a little bit, or at least maintaining an advantage that the Pacers have created elsewhere, and looks kind of like this secondary playmaker they hoped he could be. So while his start to the season was just truly dreadful, I do think the fact that he was able to get chances to play through it really helped his season and got him to a point where it's this guy should be somebody that is playing next year. If they keep their pick, he'd probably be their 9th or 10th guy, but at least he'd be in the rotation, which was not a guarantee before the season and certainly didn't look like a guarantee when the season started. So I think that's all good for him. His defense is still very flimsy. He's on his toes. He gets beat by guards a lot on drives in a way that is concerning because he was this kind of big, powerful defender at Houston, and he hasn't really been that in the NBA yet. So that's the next thing is, can next year he improve on that end of the floor and actually be more of a stopper type that they hoped he could be, because he is finally, and this is for 2 months now, showing a lot of well-rounded, this is what they hoped Jarace Walker at his size and ability to dribble could be in the pros, and he's combining it with made shots. So I still think you can't ignore that the first 2 months of the season happened. His full season grade is probably a C+ at this point. But now, this stretch of late has certainly changed the opinion of how much he should play next year, and his time with the team should continue because he's played quite well.
He has, and like you said, the first couple months, man.
Oh my God.
No one tweets me about anything, but I was getting tweets about Jarris Walker. Like, Jonathan, like, are you sure this guy's going to be good? And to my credit, I stayed on the horse. I was like, we're in this deep. We might as well keep going. And so,
like if they were healthy on December 1st, like he would have been out of the rotation for sure,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
he was. It was that level of rough, but you were right to stick with him. Good for you. You got it.
So I know you said that you haven't looked super deep into the draft that's coming up quite yet. So I'm not going to ask you about players specifically, but is there a like style of play or a certain thing that you feel like that the Pacers are going to need next year that they may be able to address in the draft?
Good question. It's interesting that I guess Peterson's a guard, right? But
yes,
all these top 4 guys seem very dynamic. Like everybody I've talked to who knows what they're talking about thinks they're all going to be at least pretty good, if not much better than that. And, the thing that I'm not concerned about, but, at least intrigued by for the Pacers as it pertains to how they'll play next season is they don't play their bench like all together all the time, right? But they do very often have 3 or 4 of their reserves out there at the same time. And so they traded Mathurin away, and now you look at – because I mean, I know some fans think whoever they draft is going to start. I don't think that's true. I think their starting lineup next year is going to be the same group that started the finals with Zubac instead of Turner, which means Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard are going to start. And so kind of what I wonder is without Mathurin to be like that bench scoring type who could, change games every so often with just like a huge punch and rush of scoring off the bench, they don't have that. Like McConnell has showed a little bit of signs of aging with his scoring this season. He's still good at getting into the paint. Toppin's a great finisher, and he fits very well with McConnell and Shepherd, and Walker might be in the mix, and they have Jay Huff and all that. But, like, they need some more dynamic play for that second unit, I think. And they play Siakam with the bench a lot. That's great, but, like, they can't do that all the time. So if that's actually a tie-breaking skill, I do wonder how much they would value somebody who can at least create their own shot a little bit. But, I mean, it seems like all those guys can do it to some extent, but Sabitzer and Peterson are the better of the two, at least at that. So you wonder if that could be a factor. Boozer's just so smart and heady. I think he would fit well in the Pacers' quick decision style, though. And so if they care about fit, that would be a thing. But that's what they like. I would have done that trade, too, that they did for Zubac. Like Mathurin had all the contract stuff coming up, and Jackson was a little overpaid for his role. But they did specifically lose, an important kind of reserve scoring punch guy. And I think if they can get that out of their pick for the coming years and then let him develop into perhaps, obviously they would hope a starter or star at some point, that would be, an effective thing to do as they kind of do this joint goals of developing that player and chasing. I mean, they think they should be in the finals next year, right? So they got to figure out how to do both those things at the same time.
Joined by Tony East, who does a great job of covering the Pacers. You can follow him on X at Tony R. East. You can check out his podcast as well, Locked on Pacers. And I'm really intrigued to see who they take, because like you said, like a lot of them are forwards. Peterson is the only guard. And the Boozer thing's interesting because, like you said, he's a really smart player. And there's a part of me that just kind of wonders if that would be the best thing, because Coach Carlisle, just kind of watching him throughout his career, isn't exactly quick to like trust young guys. Do you think that plays into it at all? Just kind of what we've seen from Coach Carlisle's history, where he can be a little reluctant to give younger players a longer leash.
Yeah, it's interesting to like talk about how he handles young players, because I think his default is trust. Like if he puts you on the floor, he trusts you to do the things that you work on. But I do think with guys who have a proven track record, if they mess up, he is more willing to let them continue to play, if that makes sense. And I think that's like a logical stance to take for a team that's trying to win, as opposed to like this season when they haven't been as much. Like they can keep their guys on the floor a little bit more. And so if that's like kind of what's intriguing to them at this stage of their team building process, like I think Boozer in the first 2 or 3 years of his career is going to make the fewest mistakes of the top 4. I mean, I'd have to, really dive in to look, but that's what he is so seemingly so good at Duke, is like he takes and makes efficient shots most of the time, unless he's playing against that Siena zone defense, apparently. He takes and makes most of the shots. He's a good rebounder. He keeps the ball moving. He can get it out of a double. He can do handoffs, right? So that's all very appealing, I would think. But yeah, I mean, and that's going to be fascinating next year. Like if they get the number 1 pick and they actually pick, and they have the number 1 any number 1 overall pick on the roster for the first time in franchise history, and they're in a tight game with, Charlotte in January, and that player messes up in the fourth quarter, like, how much leash do they deserve? Because the Pacers are going to be trying to win next year, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out and what matters to them, if it's best player available, if fit matters. And maybe they're all so good that you don't really care about any of that. But yeah, I think that'll be all very just a crazy layer of fascination, because I think you're good now. Like, you have to try to win right now, even if it means you kind of change your evals just a little bit. So it'll be just absolutely fascinating. I have no idea how I'd weigh that stuff as the team.
Looking ahead to next year a little bit more, does Jason Tatum coming back and looking so good so fast impact how you feel about Halliburton's return at all?
Yeah, triple-double, right? Like 18 rebounds this week. I would love if he made some shots, but he's been good at everything else. And, yes. Certainly the answer is yes to the question just generally. And the other guy that I think who is a guard, like DeJounte Murray, looks really good too. And he came back in not as quick as Tatum, but about a year, right? And so, yeah, I think it's good news that, all the Achilles guys, right? Even Isaiah Jackson with the Pacers, like he didn't play as well as they maybe thought he might this year, but it didn't look like he was held back by, muted athleticism compared to what he used to be or anything. So all these Achilles recoveries, at least in terms of how the player looks like physically, has made me think, okay, like there's a chance Tyrese Halliburton has somewhat the same pop as he did before. Maybe not exactly the same. Maybe it's a little different. So, yes, I think Tatum specifically, as a guy who's kind of high volume and got hurt in the playoffs and all that, is very encouraging to see. I think the Pacers will be happy to see all these guys have the recovery passes they're taking. Jason Tatum did not get shingles during his recovery, so who knows how much that will change things, certainly. The other thing that I'm curious about is, like, Kevin Durant had his Achilles pop in the finals too, right? Yeah. And then the way his worked out is the season he missed was the COVID year. So he didn't return from like June to December. So his return timeline is going to be longer than Halliburton's by about 2 months. But he is considered one of these guys that like dropped off the least from his pre-Achilles tear level to post. And I've always wondered if it's because he was out for so long. Like, he didn't even come back for almost a year and a half. And so Halliburton's going to be close to that. Like, how much will that matter or not matter? I think that is going to be the storyline I am the most interested in. Is, does he look more like, Tatum and Murray at first, where he's kind of feeling it out, or is he more like Kevin Durant, where it's like, oh, this is the exact same player, like immediately, right? So that's kind of the story of their season next year, because if he's not as good, they're not going to be as good. So they need him to be as close to as good as possible, and studying how all these guys are playing and what their strengths and weaknesses are will be major for them.
Joined by Tony East, who does a great job covering the Pacers. You can follow him on X at Tony R. East. You can check him out on Locked On Pacers and one of the many places where he writes and covers the Pacers as well. I've got 2 more questions for you, Tony, and I will let you go. Yeah. So it's amazing. The NBA season's over, not this Sunday, but next. And I know, April 12th, it's kind of nuts. And this is, I always permit myself like one general in NBA question whenever you're on. Everyone loves San Antonio. They're like 26-2 since February 1st or something absurd like that. And with that being said, I don't think that they can win the title. But where are you with them? How do you kind of feel about really the NBA as a whole with the playoffs right around the corner?
Yeah, they are so good that – so everybody says the same thing with them, right? I don't know how you feel or what your maybe specific doubts are, but like they haven't played a playoff series yet at all. The Spurs in general haven't played a playoff series since 2019. Like they have a new head coach this year, right? Like I have no idea what to make of what the Spurs will be like in the playoffs. And then some teams like the Pacers 2 years ago, it was their first time in the playoffs and they made the conference finals. And then some teams like the Thunder, who won the title last year, like they got beat up by Luka the year before that, right? They lost in the second round. So like you have no idea what that scene, that level of adjustments, that much focus is going to do. Wemby's a different beast, but the guys that I feel like could cause the Spurs the most problems would be like a Steph Curry type, who the Warriors are not a threat in the playoffs, let's be honest, or like a Luka type, and they might play the Lakers. Who knows? So I don't know how I feel. Like I think they're, probably deserve to be a tier above what I'm about to say, but I kind of view them in the same like finals equity tier as Minnesota and Denver myself. Yeah. But there's a chance that they start in the playoffs and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm stupid. Like they're that good. They've clearly proven it, and Wembanyama's just a freak. But there is an element with every team of like I need to see it to believe it. Like Detroit last year, surging into the playoffs, 6th seed. Here they go. Can they beat the Knicks? And then they don't even win a home game, and they have like a couple embarrassing, humiliating end-of-game situation losses, right? The first year in the playoffs is just different. You learn a lot from it, and that's a good deal. And so I think the Spurs are going to be a menace next year for sure. But yeah, I think that they're a great regular season team. They have a lot of depth, but they have a lot of young guys. I think they might be a little overstated in terms of how good they could be in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's the youth, and I just don't think they have enough shooting. I wish they had
They don't.
one more guy. It's like Champagnie and like Keldon Johnson occasionally. Like that's the extent of their shooting. So
yeah, they're going to be doing what every team that's had Harrison Barnes every year has done, and that's begging for more from Harrison Barnes in the playoffs.
That's exactly right. Last thing for you, Tony, and I'll let you go. Any takes on the Final Four? I know that you're like a mainly March guy when it comes to college basketball, but that means you've seen all these teams play 4 games. Any takes on it?
I watched Illinois play. Well, I had 2 actually. I watched Illinois play their full game against Iowa. Maybe Iowa just stinks because they were the worst team in the Elite Eight or something. But I thought Illinois looked awesome. I was like, wow, this is a 3 seed. Like they feel like to me they could win. They have NBA level talent. They have a lot of it, and they have a lot of these like know how to play Euro guys who are just good. So I'm pretty bullish on them. But UConn's obviously a beast, and we've seen them and their institution be able to handle the situation before. And the other take I have on the Final Four, I guess also Michigan is old, and that matters a lot. Like experienced players is a big deal. So my current prediction for the title game is going to be Michigan, Illinois, but I don't feel great about it. My other thing that I'm curious about as it comes to like a college basketball trend is I don't know all the specifics of this. I've been talking to NBA people about this, and they have a take on it. Is my impression from them is 2 of the teams that did the most work recruiting in Europe are Arizona and Illinois. Is that true?
Oh yeah, like it's Illinois. Like they have a lineup where it's only guys from the Balkans. There's not a single, which is crazy. Yeah, when you look at Arizona, like their centers from Serbia. They're small forward. Yeah. They're small forwards from Germany. So yeah, like they've done quite a bit of work over there.
What I don't know is like I can't compare it to other teams, right? I only watched those teams in the Elite Eight or whatever. So I don't know how much recruiting in Europe other teams have done, but I do wonder how much of a trend that is now going to become in college basketball. Is guys who have played as pros in Europe before become so valuable because just knowing how to play is crucial. Yeah. And I mean, again, watching Illinois 1 full game, I was like, oh my gosh, like this team looks great compared to normal college teams. Usually I hate college basketball because these plays stink. They develop a bad shot and they miss a 17th footer. Like Illinois never did that ever. They looked awesome. So I wonder if that's going to become like a just general college trend.
That's kind of what I'm thinking as well, Tony. I got to run. Thank you so much for taking 20 minutes or so to come on, man. I'll see you later, man.
You got it.
That is Tony East. You can check him out on X at Tony R. East. You can check out his podcast, Locked on Pacers. Go read him as well. He's a really good writer. Does a great job covering the Fever, too. You'll be hearing more from him here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. And you'll hear more on the Final Four when we come back in 4 minutes.
One day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching the show on X, _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. 317-228-1430. That is the phone number. If you have thoughts on the Final Four, you got predictions, that's what I want. If you want to call in and talk about the Final Four, John called in earlier and he was telling me about his bracket. John, I appreciate you listening. I'm just going to be honest, man. I don't care about your bracket. And a lot of other people don't either, all right? Call in. Let me know, who do you think is going to win these games? Who do you like to win the national title game? All those things. Call in again. That number is 317-228-1430. I like Illinois and I like Arizona to both win each of their games, and what I think are just going to be just outstanding basketball games. And it's a lot of strength on strength. You know, you've got the physicality of Arizona playing against the size of Michigan. Okay, Illinois and UConn. You've got two teams that just run beautiful offense. Like, they both, I think these two teams, Illinois, UConn, and Iowa, I think all three of them do as good a job as I've seen of a team that just continuously runs their offense through the whole shot clock. Like when you watch other teams, you know, like if you watched Arkansas during the tournament, when there was 7 seconds left on the shot clock, movement stopped. They gave the ball to a certain player, and then they tried to make something happen off the bounce. But when you watch UConn, when you watch Illinois, Iowa, before they got bounced, they just keep running their offense until there's 1 second left on the shot clock. And it's why their offenses are so efficient and they score so many points in the half court. I think Michigan does a really nice job of this as well. And yeah, all these teams are so well coached. There's so many good players. I think it's going to be a blast. And, I feel weird because I picked Arizona to win the game, but the more I talk about Arizona versus Michigan, the more concern I have about my pick. Because it's like, Arizona doesn't take a ton of threes. And, if Michigan outscores them by 18 points from behind the 3-point line, like, that's a tough thing to overcome unless you're shooting free throws and you're getting offensive rebounds, two things that Arizona does a really nice job of. The other thing is the fact that Michigan runs better offense than Arizona. Like, if you look at, I don't want to become too big of a nerd here, but there's a stat. It's called points per possession. Very self-explanatory. When you look at that number, it's a really good indicator of who has a more efficient offense. And you can trim it down to half-court offense. Long story short, Michigan has one of the best half-court offenses in college basketball this year. And it's because of that ability to have guys fully bought in, fully running the offense throughout the entire time that, that they have the ball for those 30 seconds on the shot clock. And so, again, 4 teams that are really well coached. And I think the games are going to be awesome. The concerts downtown are going to be awesome. If you go to indysportsticket.com and you go to events, you'll see a thing that says Final Four Fan Hub. And it's got a list of all the different things, like the music festival that's going on, tip-off, tailgate, all sorts of things that are happening. So if you want information on that, indysportsticket.com. But ultimately, and the reason why March Madness is the best, is as soon as these games start, you've heard me talk about, size and physicality and the way that these teams guard and so on and so forth. The best thing about the Final Four and about March Madness and why there's so many iconic moments is because it's one game. like whenever you watch, any sport where there's a best of 7 series, a lot of the memorable moments happen in game 7, right? Because it's winner take all. It's one and done. And the entire NCAA tournament is laid out that way. And some guy on one of these rosters that no one's really talking about could all of a sudden have a crazy game. And all of a sudden that guy is a legend forever. And for Illinois, I think that guy could be Keaton Wagler, which, that's obviously a guy that people are talking about. But this is a freshman who went into Mackey Arena and had 47 or 49. I don't remember. Either way, if you can score 47 or 49 points in Mackey Arena against, that Purdue team, then, you could probably go get 47 in the Final Four against UConn. Braylon Mullins, freshman for UConn, is coming off making the biggest shot of his life. I'm telling you, he's due. He's going to go on a really, really nice run here. Because I'm telling you, like, that shot is just going to do so much for his confidence. And I think those are two guys who could really cement themselves, even more so if you're Braylon Mullins, and just the history of their programs with a couple of really, really big games. I think those are two guys in the Final Four who could do that. When you go to the Michigan and Arizona game, I think that the two guys that you'd be looking at to have kind of those big, not out of the blue performances, but look, if Yaxel Lundenborg, continues at this rate, man, like we're going to be looking at maybe one of the best NCAA tournament runs ever from just an individual player, because he just looks unstoppable right now. It's really, really impressive what we're seeing from him. And he could come out, have another game where he scores 28 and has 8 rebounds and 6 assists and, continues to be at the top of the college basketball world, because he's been the best player in the tournament, and I think he's the best player left. And then for Arizona, I think that guy is Koa Pete for them, because I think part of what would kind of add to the legacy of it is this Michigan front court's really good. You heard Zach Pierles earlier in the show of CBS Sports say Michigan has the best front court in college basketball. Could you imagine this freshman Koa Pete, who I love watching play, by the way, just tough, physical, defends, plays through contact. Anyway, he comes out and scores like 24. I mean, like, this is, like Illinois hasn't made the Final Four in, forever, it seems. A team, west of, Baylor hasn't won a national title since like the 90s. Arizona could be the first team to do that. And so, like, there's a lot of legacy stuff on the line here, and I'm so excited to kind of see how all of it plays out. I think we all are. Again, I like Michigan. Excuse me. No, I don't. I like Arizona, and I like Illinois to win their games. Chris, have I asked you for your picks yet?
I think we talked a little bit about it yesterday, and I was going to go with Arizona overall, but it's going to be a tough game. It's not going to be like okay, so I feel like Arizona's going to win, but I would like to see Michigan take it. Either one of those twos, I agree, will win the championship overall.
Why do you want to see Michigan win?
It's a bit of a personal thing. I was a small fan in high school. One of my health teacher in high school went to Michigan and wrestled for Michigan with the Steiner brothers. So we got to hear a lot about Michigan in high school. So
I bet.
That would be my tie. It's not like something I follow all the time, but I would kind of root for Michigan, but I ultimately think Arizona would take it.
Where are you from?
You're
a Giants fan, in the NFL, the Michigan thing, like that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm from here.
Okay.
Born and raised. Naptown.
Why are you don't call it that, man. I find it, so did you see the thing with Puka Nacua?
I did, yeah.
So for those who don't know, Puka Nacua checked himself into rehab because it seems like he got drunk and then bit 2 women. Kind of nuts. Yeah, I know.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, pretty insane. And I was reading that story and I was like, that would never happen here. That would never happen here. And I'll tell you why that would never happen here when we come back in about 4 minutes.
Kids dream big, often all at once. One day it's a chef, the next a superhero vet pirate. Their dreams may change, but your support doesn't have to. With Indiana 529 Education Savings Plans, start saving for their future today with flexible investment options and generous tax advantages. While they might outgrow the costumes, they'll never outgrow the need for an education. Visit myindiana529.com to get started with as little as $10. Please read the disclosure booklet carefully before investing. Sponsored by Indiana 529.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also, watch or follow at Ticket 1430 as well, because eventually we'll have the show over there. And you can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. Before the break, we were talking about Puka Nacua checked himself into rehab, which is, a nice thing to hear because, look, I don't know how online you are, Chris, but, there are videos from, months ago of him clearly, being drunk and kind of acting a fool a little bit. And the story's not funny, but, it is. He's, being sued or something because he bit 2 women.
I've not seen the entirety of the story. And sometimes when I'm online, I don't know what to believe because there's a lot of AI made up stuff. So please indulge me on Puka Nacua's actions.
I haven't seen a video. I'd love to see a video. I think it'd be so funny. But, apparently he was out on the town, probably had a couple drinks in him. And I just love the idea of a 6'4", 220-pound specimen. Not punching somebody. And I'm not saying that he should have. He shouldn't have bit him. But instead being nah.
You should not bite people.
Instead, let me bite you. And I read it. And I just think that that's a story that is so much more likely to happen in a place like Los Angeles or Miami or New York. And this is the nice thing about Indianapolis. It's so easy to find the stupid, the stupid young guy who gets drafted to the Colts. Because if you're in a place like Miami or LA or New York or wherever, it's just a lot easier for stupid to find you, Whereas if you do something like that in Indianapolis, there was some sort of intent. You went out looking for trouble, and you called it Naptown in Indianapolis earlier.
I did.
And let me say this first. I love Indianapolis. I've been here 6 years now or something like that. I think it's a great place to be. And I think that now because I'm married, whereas when I first moved here and I was single and I was just looking for stuff to do, I was like, this is not a great place to be. And I used to joke that it's called Naptown because that's the best thing to do on a weekend here. Just go nap, man.
All right.
That's why it's called Naptown. That's what you're supposed to do. There's nothing going on. And so, but now that I'm married, I don't really feel that way anymore. So, but yeah, man, biting somebody. I haven't done that since I was 3.
I mean, you get put in timeout for that. Where did this happen?
I think it happened at a bar, some sort of social club kind of thing.
See, during the break, we were kind of talking about this, and I was asking, whenever you were telling me, I thought it had happened here. And living in Indianapolis my whole life, I'm just kind of I'm not surprised that, that happens. Mark Sanchez comes to town, you know what I'm saying? You never know what's going to happen here. But
the Mark Sanchez thing.
Yeah.
He got stabbed or whatever, and it happened because he went out at night and mess with the wrong person. Anyways, I read that and I was like, yeah, that is something that just doesn't really happen here quite as often as it does in some of these other places.
Yeah, that's wild.
Have you seen? I don't know if you saw this either. I think it was Chappell who had this story yesterday. JT Tuimoloau, edge rusher for the Colts, is changing what he would like to be called to Jalen. And so he's not going to go by JT anymore. He's going to go by Jalen. And the comments below it are crazy. The number of people who are like, Darius Leonard changed his name to Shaq Leonard, and then or maybe it was the other way around anyway. It was like all of a sudden he wasn't very good anymore. And I just, this is why sports are the best. Like if Bob in accounting was like, I don't want to be called Bob anymore, I want to be called Robert, no one would be like, don't do that, because if you do that, then like your accounting numbers, they're just not going to be as good. It's only a sports thing, which I think makes it awesome. And with that being said, I'm kind of hoping that it's true, because JT Tuimoloau's rookie year, not that great, not that great. So
some kind of a personal upgrade, apparently.
I hope so.
Maybe I change my name and I'll get a pay raise, or my stats go up or something like that. Then you can brag about it. But
it's nothing will ever be better though. This is, Chris, is one of my favorite stories ever. I think it's so funny. So Arizona playing in the Final Four. Do you know who the last number 1 overall pick is to come out of Arizona?
I do not.
Okay. This guy named DeAndre Ayton, taking number 1 overall to Phoenix. And he shows up. Phoenix, the Suns go to the finals. He was important. All this kind of stuff. And then, people find out that he's lazy. And so the Suns trade him to Portland. And he shows up in Portland. And there's like this video of him showing up. And he gives himself a nickname. Never give yourself a nickname. Never do it. He said, I want people to call me Domin Ayton.
Oh, no.
And he stunk after that. Started coming off the bench, signed like a veteran minimum to play for the Lakers this year. And, it's a lesson, man. Like, never give yourself a nickname. There's a guy that I played baseball with in college. We showed up as freshmen. And, we're talking to guys and, trying to be cool, And he said that he wanted his nickname to be the Future, and he wanted for people to call him the Future. And he very quickly became the Past. He got cut so quickly.
Didn't work out too well.
Didn't work out at all, really. And so, yeah, I'll never forget that. So never give yourself a nickname. Look, if you give yourself a nickname, I'm just not going to like you anymore. That's the other thing. Like you got to be a little full of it to give yourself a nickname. And yeah, anyway, we're not off the rails. We're fine.
Fair enough.
So this is something that I came in today and I really wanted to talk about. Are you a big baseball guy? No, that's okay. That's all right. So there's this thing now in Major League Baseball. Opening day wasn't that long ago. Wrigley Field's already selling out, and baseball is just they're on a hot streak right now. No one liked the commissioner of baseball there for a bit because he was making all these changes, and traditionalist fans didn't like them. They didn't like the pitch clock. They didn't like that they made the bases a little bit bigger, so now it's easier to steal bases, and there's more activity. All these changes nobody liked, but it's made the game better. It's made the game more fun to watch. And now they have added ABS challenging, which allows you to challenge balls and strikes. And it is one of my favorite things happening in sports right now.
I have heard about this. Because
the one thing that is so good about it, it is so fast. Dan Dockich has the joke where, during basketball games, they should put like a sponsorship on the referees' butts, because you spend half the time watching a basketball game looking at them bent over, looking at a monitor. It's like an advertising opportunity right there, if I've ever seen one. And so with the ABS challenge, it's like 10 seconds. Like they track it so quickly. And I wish that there was a way for every other sport to get on board and improve the speed with which challenges happen. Like if you ever go to a Colts game or a Pacers game, don't go to the bathroom at halftime or at the end of a quarter. Go during a challenge because it's longer than halftime. It takes forever, and for some reason, no one ever leaves their seat. But anyway, the other thing about this that I like, not only that it takes no time at all, creates more drama. We're going to learn very quickly who the good umpires are and who the bad umpires are. And we're going to get like this player versus umpire thing that I just know is going to happen. So, for example, in the NBA, there was a lot of drama there for a little bit between Chris Paul and Scott Foster because Chris Paul had like never won a game that Scott Foster had refereed. And this wasn't in like year 4 of Chris Paul's career. This is in like year 14 of his career where he still hadn't won a game that Scott Foster had officiated. And it was a big deal. And I think we're going to have a lot of that in baseball now where, guys know pretty quickly who the umpires are that give the outside corner versus don't and all those things. So I just think it adds another layer, and I'm really, really excited about just kind of seeing how that develops over the course of the season. So last small topic here, and then we'll get back to the big ones of like March Madness, the Final Four, and the Colts. And the Colts are always a big topic, especially on this show. But Bill Self is returning to Kansas, and I'm so glad. And I think that North Carolina should be incredibly thankful as well, because Kansas and North Carolina, like those are two of the best jobs in college basketball right now. And Bill Self, he's going to continue to win games there, and I think that we are going to start seeing more and more college basketball coaches coach at older ages. Rick Barnes, who's the head coach at Tennessee, had a really interesting quote earlier during the tournament. I can't remember if it was after a win or a loss, but someone kind of asked him about it. Like, hey, like how much longer do you think that you're going to coach for? And he said longer because of how his recruiting works now. He said it takes about a week to recruit a kid to Tennessee because you sit down, you say, hey, Chris, $500K, cool? And that's a non-starter. And they say, okay, see you later. Hey, Sheldon, $500K, cool? Sheldon's clearly white, by the way. Hey, just saying. Just say the only people named Sheldon that I've ever met were white. Just saying. Anyway.
So random.
Sorry, yeah. It's just, anyway. So, it's easier to recruit guys. So we're going to see guys like Tom Izzo, who announced that he's coming back. He's 73, I believe. And so we're going to see some of these, legendary coaches. Rick Pitino's 75, I think. So we're going to be able to see these guys coach longer, which I think it's an awesome thing because college sports, we want to make it about the players. I think the people do. But as the sport continues on, the sport will always be about coaches because Rick Pitino is going to be at St. John's for, 7 years or whatever. Hopefully Coach DeVries in Bloomington, hopefully he figures it out and he's down there for 25 years. And that's the personality that fans really see the most and bond with the most. Like when you think of Purdue, maybe you think of Zach Edey. I don't. I think of Matt Painter because he's been there for 21 years. And so I know that, when the NIL stuff kind of happened, there was a lot of questions of like where's this going to take sports? But I think some of the good things that it has done is it's kept people around longer because the ultimate thing in sports is backstory and narrative. And I know people don't like to hear that, but more people are going to watch, let's say hypothetically, the Lakers go to the finals. Everyone's tuned in because everyone wants to know if LeBron James is going to win his 5th title. Everyone wants to know if Luka, a guy who couldn't get it done in Dallas, was traded away from Dallas because of all these issues. Like, can he finally get it done? Backstory is a really important part of sports, even if we don't think about it. Like the backstory for Illinois fans, like they haven't been to the Final Four in forever. When Purdue finally broke through and broke that 44-year drought, It wasn't just about, hey, Purdue's really good. Maybe they can win the national title. It was also a big deal because of the backstory of having that 44-year drought and a guy in, Coach Painter who'd been there for so long finally breaking through. Backstory is really important, and backstory is only built when you have people who are at a certain place for a long time. Like the legacy of Christian Laettner at Duke goes very differently if he transfers every single year, which is why I think that we need to do something about the portal. But NIL, it's going to keep coaches around longer because recruiting is a little bit easier. It's going to keep players in college basketball longer because, your Alex Carabans of the world, they can be really good college players for 4 years and make a lot of money and not have to make the jump to the NBA too quickly. So we're seeing some of the positive sides of NIL right now, which I think is a really good thing. And I think college basketball, despite the issues with the transfer portal, I think college basketball is going to benefit in a pretty large way from NIL and how all of this stuff works. So jumped around a little bit there. That was fun. We brought it all back together. Speaking of bringing it all together, the Final Four, bringing all four corners of that March Madness bracket here to Indianapolis. The games, they're on Saturday. I'll give you my thoughts on Michigan versus Arizona and UConn versus Illinois when we come back in about 3 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. We're just rolling along today, and I've done a terrible job of looking at my X. We'll see if any Timothy Bowman asking, will Indiana Jones, I don't think he's cool enough for that nickname, Daniel Jones. Will it be available? And who do you think will start week 1? I think he'll be available. I feel like they're acting a way in which he will be. Like, I don't think that you give that much money to a guy who isn't going to play a full 2 years for you. Then again, it's Chris Ballard, so maybe that's what they decide to do. So if you want to ask questions, you can call in 317-228-1430. You can comment in the YouTube chat, or you can tweet at me on X at __Jonathan Smith. Volter on X chiming in saying it's weird because Alec Pierce is way overpaid, but at the same time they had to keep him. You don't have to do anything, man. That's an important lesson, man. You don't have to do anything. They could have moved on. The issue is, that I just don't think that they wanted to have more needs than they already do for the upcoming draft. And I get wanting to stay younger with Alec Pierce compared to Michael Pittman, who is a little bit older. But more on the Colts here in a moment. The Final Four is in town, people, and it's a great one. I know that everyone every year, or at least for the past couple of years, kind of complains about the lack of Cinderella runs and how we don't have mid-majors making runs to the Sweet 16 anymore. Look, to be an elitist here for a second, I'm glad. I don't want for Cinderella runs to happen because I want good games. I want to see Illinois play UConn. I want to see Michigan play Arizona. Okay, I don't want to see High Points play against Arizona in the Sweet 16, even though Arizona probably would have beaten them just as badly as they did Arkansas. I want something to look forward to. I don't want to get on FanDuel or DraftKings or Bet365, wherever you like to gamble, and see a 19.5-point line past the first weekend. Okay, I want for good teams to advance in the tournament, and we got that this year. It's why people are so excited. That's the reality, because everyone knows how good the 4 teams that are currently in the Final Four are. So Illinois, they're taking on UConn, and what seems to be the game that people aren't quite as interested in, and that again speaks to the fact that when you look at Michigan and Arizona, people are really pumped up for that game because it's 2 good teams, the 2 best teams left in college basketball. And I'm excited to watch Illinois play because I've just really enjoyed watching them. Keaton Wagler, their stud freshman, reminds me so much of Tyrese Halliburton. He's like 6'5", skinny, not overly athletic, sees the floor really well, does a really good job of just like creating his own shot despite not being some like crazy athletic guy, very similar to Halliburton. And the dude's just cold, man. Like, to be able to walk into Mackey and score, 47 or 49, whatever it ended up being, speaks to how good of a player he is. And it's not just the scoring, it's not just the passing. He has what I would call like role player tendencies as well. Like, there are guys who play, 12 minutes a night because they rebound really well or because they defend at a high level. He rebounds really well, and he kind of has some of those role player tendencies. So he's the stud freshman for Illinois. They aren't here without him. A guy who was ranked outside of the top 100 when it came to the top recruits in the country last year. Braylon Mullins, he's the stud for UConn. It's coming. He's going to hit a bunch of threes on Saturday. Okay, he's coming off hitting the best shot in his life, biggest shot of his life. He's supposed to be a shooter who's kind of gone through a cold stretch, 14 of 66 in his last 10 games from 3. And, when you go through a rough patch like that for that long as well, your confidence can be shaken. And then he hits that shot against Duke. And it's like, I don't think his confidence is shaken anymore. I think he's going to have a really big game against Illinois. And he's the kind of guy that, he gets hot, makes like 7 to 10 from 3 because he's going to get good looks because that UConn offense is just gorgeous to look at. And then from there, sorry, I got distracted there for a second. From there, like if a guy goes 7 to 10 from 3, like that guy's team's probably going to win the game. Okay, it's a big lift, especially in these one and done spots. I'm also excited. I've said that word way too much today. I've said excited way too much. Anyway, I love Stojakovic, the son of Peja, who also plays for Illinois. Part of why I think older teams win in college basketball isn't just because they're older and they're more physically developed and they filled out their frames a little bit better. I think there's also a little more self-awareness. 21-year-olds who have played 2 years of college basketball have a better idea of what they're good at compared to 18-year-olds. 18-year-old freshmen may be super talented, but there's still a learning curve. Say, I'm going to show up to college and I'm going to, average 20. And it's like, nope, you're going to average 12 because this isn't easy. Okay. So there's a learning curve, even though freshmen can obviously be impactful. And when I watch Stojakovic play for Illinois, he is so clearly a 21-year-old college basketball player. He knows that he is at his best when he's attacking the rim. He's not a good shooter. He's a slasher. And every time he gets the basketball, he's going to the rim. Like you just know that that's what's going to happen because he's a good player. And good players only do the things that they're good at. And that is what Stojakovic does. And when you look at really all 4 of these teams, you see that repeatedly. All 4 of these teams have players that do a really good job of just playing within themselves and not trying to do too much. And Stojakovic, I think, is going to be a big part of why Illinois wins this game on Saturday over UConn. I think they're naturally going to get easier shots because UConn has struggled to keep teams away from the rim. 25 of Duke's 48 shots were at the rim when they played UConn. 26 of Michigan State's 58 shots were at the rim when they played UConn. 24 of UCLA's 49 shots were at the rim. And almost every great offense in basketball starts with the ability to get rim pressure. When you can get to the rim, everything else opens up. Now, it hasn't cost UConn quite yet. Obviously, they're in the Final Four, so maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of something, but I think it will on Saturday because the Fighting Illini just have an amazing offense that's great around the rim. They shoot 63% on shots at the rim this year. And I think that they're going to get there with relative ease in this game. I just don't think that UConn has the players required to keep the ball in front of them. Okay? And even if, Illinois doesn't finish at the rim, they offensive rebound really well. It's a large part of why they beat Iowa. Okay? I think they're going to get easier shots, and they're going to send the UConn Huskies home. Whoever gets easier shots tends to win the game. And then you've got Michigan and Arizona, the game that everyone is looking forward to. The game that feels like the real national title game. Kind of seems like whoever wins this one is going to go on to beat the winner of UConn and Illinois. Okay? So I like Arizona to win the game. I picked them before the tournaments. And with that being said, Michigan's very capable of beating them. There's a reason why the line is 1.5 the last time I checked. And I think that the difference in the game is going to be guard play. These are 2 teams that have tremendous front courts. So much size, so much athleticism, so much touch, just so much skill, between Koa Pete and Mara and Johnson. And you can just keep on running through them. Okay, the front courts for these 2 teams are awesome. And we say it every year, and then it's like we forget, guard play is what wins in March. And Arizona's guards are better than Michigan's. It's just the reality of it. But for some reason, whenever people bring up Arizona, a guy who should be named first, Jaden Bradley, the Big 12 Player of the Year, He's never mentioned early enough when people discuss Arizona. He's going to be why Arizona wins this game. Okay. Jaden Bradley makes excellent decisions with the basketball. He defends at an elite level. He rises to the occasion whenever Arizona needs a bucket late. You can just tell that he's a senior. He's been one of the top clutch time scorers all year. And with about 3 minutes left to go in this game, Arizona and Michigan are going to be tied. Maybe there's been like 4 lead changes in the last 2 minutes, and people are just kind of like holding on by a thread. There's so much tension. And then Arizona's going to give Jaden Bradley the ball. He's going to be like, don't worry, guys. I got this. And he's going to proceed to score. And he's going to hit a couple of big shots that ultimately sends Michigan home. It's what he's done all year. He's done an excellent job of closing out the various opponents that Arizona has played. Okay? And then alongside him, you've got a guy who could be the 5th pick in the draft. I don't think he's going to be. I think it's going to be Darius Acuff, but we'll see. You got Braden Burries, 6'4", 205-pound freshman. I think he's going to play really well on top of it. Okay, again, a stud, a guy who's going to be a top 10 pick in the upcoming NBA draft because the dude just gets buckets. And as Kevin Durant, the great philosopher, once said, this game's about buckets. And that is his best skill. He puts the ball in the bucket. He does it at every level. He's a legitimate 3-level scorer. A lot of times people are like, oh, this guy's a 3-level scorer. And then you watch them play, and it's like, no, they make threes and they make layups. But like that mid-range area isn't really a part of their game. Braden Burries is a legitimate 3-level scorer. Shooting 40% from 3 on the year. Shooting 45% from the floor on pull-up 2s. Shoots 64% at the rim. That's, like, I say that, and you're like, yeah, it's at the rim. But when you're 6'4", playing Division I college basketball, and you're being met at the rim by 7-footers, 64%, not the easiest mark to reach. He's also shooting 81% from the foul line. He scores at every single level. And also, again, 6'4", 205. Don't stand in front of that guy when he's on the break. And I think both Burries and Bradley are better than their counterparts for Michigan. Okay, like when you look at the backcourt for Michigan, Elliot Cadeau for Michigan, he can really shoot it. But he's going to be the smallest player on the floor by a mile in this game. I'm interested to see how he holds up on the defensive end of the floor. Okay, and then Namari Burnett just kind of fits in for Michigan, and good shooter, just kind of fills his role, and that's really it. And when the separation is that big in a tournament that's all about guards, I think you have to take Arizona. Chris, what?
Yeah, no, just to update on Elliot Cadeau, since you had came up with that, I just saw a story online. He is good. He is released from, if some of you didn't know, maybe missed it, he was receiving treatment after an allergic reaction, left the Michigan facility with a sheet covering his face on a stretcher, but not as serious as it may appear, as he has been released and treated, and he is good to go.
That's good to hear. Also, another reason to pick Arizona. I just feel like everything that Arizona does right now and everything that Michigan does and Illinois and UConn, they should just be fully locked into every decision that they're making. And for some reason, they can't lock in on whatever kind of food they're feeding their team to help their starting point guard not have to go to the hospital.
Dude, that could have been dangerous, man. I don't know if you've known anybody that's like allergic to peanuts or anything like that. It could be scary for sure. My
best friend in kindergarten was deathly allergic to peanuts, so I had to sit at the other end of the table, and I changed my lunch so that I could sit by him because I'm just a really nice guy, and I gave up my peanut butter and banana sandwiches. I don't know if you've ever had that.
Oh, those are amazing.
They're so good. Loved them. I remember going to my mom and being like, can I get something else? And she was like, why? And I told her. And she was like, absolutely. So, anyway, Off topic there, but that's okay.
There you go.
But yeah, like I just the whole I just can't believe that like at any point in the year, and it's not like Elliot Cadeau's new, but I believe he's been at Michigan for at least 2 years now. They've gone the whole season without this happening. I'm really curious to see like who, not the guilty party is, because I'm sure that it's an accident. Like who is at fault for this?
Right. Yeah. There's no specifics in the story about what he ate because he ate something he was allergic to. But now's not the time to be experimenting with new foods, my friend.
It's not.
We
It's
got
not.
business to take care of.
That's right. It's right. And so it's amazing. I'm glad that he's okay. That's a really good thing to hear. And yeah. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I got some tweets asking me about the Colts. Chris Ballard sat down with Kay Adams and weighed in on trading Michael Pittman Jr. and signing Alec Pierce to that extension and the Daniel Jones extension. And we'll have that audio for you when we come back in 3 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching the show on X __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. So many ways to listen. There's really no excuse not to. Before we came back, Chris asked me if I had any conspiracy theories, and actually I do have one if you're interested.
Do you want the sounder?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. I'm excited, man. I like conspiracies. What do you got for me?
So last year, there's always conspiracy with the NBA draft lottery because everyone's always really invested in it and all that kind of stuff. And last year, we had the whole, the NBA rigged it for the Mavs because they traded Luka and they wanted them to trade Luka and all that nonsense. It wasn't rigged. Let me just say that. I heard this one the other day, and I actually thought it was pretty good. So teams are sending out their season ticket prices for next year to current season ticket holders who want to renew. And the Nets, who are awful, raised their prices pretty substantially. And I wonder if that's because they've been told that they're going to get the number 1 overall pick.
Interesting.
And so they raised their prices because they know already that they're going to win the lottery and that people are going to have to come in town to pay to see the number 1 overall pick. So if they win the lottery, maybe.
That would make sense.
Maybe I'll believe it.
We
see.
will have to put a pin in this and come back to it after the.
That's what I'm thinking. And they should sorry, I had jokes that anyway. I was trying to figure out how do I not say that they're going to jiggle the balls around and pick who goes first,
I think you just said it, man.
Oh, I did. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. There you go. Oh, here comes another one.
I don't have another one. That's the only one I got for today. The Colts and Chris Ballard, man, just more nonsense from him. He sat down with Kay Adams at the owners' meetings out in Arizona and talked a little bit about Alec Pierce and them bringing him back. Here is Chris Ballard talking about Daniel Jones's connection with Alec Pierce and his justification for paying Alec Pierce so much. Chris Ballard right there, manager, talking about bringing back Alec Pierce, who became the highest paid free agent wide receiver in NFL history. Okay, and he's now making more money than guys like Devontae Adams and Chris Godwin, Cortland Sutton, and Nico Collins, and Devontae Smith, and Jamison Williams, which would be fine, except for the fact that he's not better than any of those guys. And in that clip, Chris Ballard talks about how, Alec Pierce has a really good relationship with Daniel Jones and how they got on the same page so quickly and all these things. And I just feel like it's a given that was going to happen because Alec Pierce is the only guy on this Colts roster who can win down the field. So anytime you're wanting to, push the ball down the field and try and create an explosive play, it kind of has to go to Alec Pierce because that wasn't a skill set that Michael Pittman Jr. had. That wasn't a skill set that Josh Downs had. He was the only guy on the roster who was capable of winning downfield. And when you're the only guy on the roster capable of doing that, like, of course, like you're going to make big plays that are going to come from Daniel Jones. So I think that, the product of those guys having a connection so quickly is simply that Alec Pierce was the only guy who was capable of doing those things. And it's good. It's important. I'm glad that the Colts have, a deep threat on the roster still because explosive plays are so incredibly important in today's NFL. Okay, like you have to have them because going 75 yards and on 12 plays is really hard to do. It is because someone's bound to commit a penalty or a player on the defense is bound to make a really good play because those guys are pros too. And so you need the ability to take the top off the defense. With that being said, you still have to be able to win underneath and take what the defense gives you sometimes. You have to be able to do both, right? And Alec Pierce, I think, has a very limited route tree. All that he does is win down the field. He's not a guy who's going to run a drag route, catch it, turn up field, and pick up an extra 8 yards. He's not going to, run a quick slant on 3rd and 4 for a first down. We haven't seen him do those things. And when you're the 12th highest paid receiver in football, I think you need to be able to run the whole route tree. We saw the Steelers fork out a lot of money for DK Metcalf. He's now the 5th highest paid wide receiver in football. And I think he and Alec Pierce are very comparable. And that didn't really work out great for Pittsburgh. And I could see a similar thing happening here with Alec Pierce. Now, there is hope for this to turn out well because Alec Pierce has proven something over the first 4 years that he has been here. Okay? Despite the quarterback issues, Alec Pierce didn't look like a guy worthy of being a second-round pick his first 2 years in Indy. And to his credit, he worked through it. The last 2 years, he has turned himself into a really good player that had a lot of options in free agency. Okay, he has shown that he works on his craft and that he is capable of getting better. Some players, they get to the NFL and they plateau. They don't get any better. For example, Anthony Richardson. Okay, they don't work hard enough or whatever it is. Okay, and Alec Pierce has shown that he is a guy who can add to his game. And I hope he does because he's going to get a ton of targets this year. And if he gets, 90 targets where everything's over 10 yards down the field, I don't think things are going to pan out very well for the Colts, especially since it looks like it doesn't look like it's true. Daniel Jones is the guy, which I hate. The Colts extended him this offseason as well. 2-year deal up to $100 million. Here is Chris Ballard talking about the re-signing of Daniel Jones. Maybe. Chris Ballard right there talking about the decision to bring back Daniel Jones. You know what would have been a better decision? Bring in Kirk Cousins. I'm so serious. I 5 years, $172 million to be a backup quarterback is kind of nuts. But anyway, Chris Ballard, however, opted to bring in Daniel Jones, a guy who was fresh off of tearing his Achilles, and a guy who got worse as the year went on last year. And I know Chris Ballard did his whole, trying to be like nice and considerate thing. I'm not going to cuss on your show, but I don't really care what other people say. When in reality, when it comes to the quarterback position, Chris Ballard should care about what everybody else says, because for the last decade, he has gotten it wrong repeatedly. I don't like the idea of betting on a guy that has now torn his ACL and his Achilles. I'm not a Daniel Jones believer. I wasn't last year. He played well against a lot of bad teams. It's the reality of it. When the Colts played playoff teams with Daniel Jones under center, they went 2-3. Okay? It's just not very good. And in those 5 games against playoff teams that he started and finished, he only played well in 2 of them. And the more games he played, the worse he got. And whenever I say that, people immediately mention, he was hurt. He was hurt. That's why he didn't play well. Have you seen this guy's career? He's almost always hurt. And guess what? Everybody in the NFL, after week 4, is playing hurt. That's just the reality of it. And the idea of maybe paying this guy up to $50 million in a year is just insane to me. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to hit whatever his, bonuses are. I don't think that's going to happen. But this guy's won 1 playoff game. And it has resulted in, generational wealth, as they call it. Okay? And I just, oh, man. He didn't even make the playoffs last year. And they're like, yeah, we'll give you $50 million a year. And I don't know what it is about Chris Ballard, but he just loves himself a quarterback with some injury history. Daniel Jones had it before he brought him in. Carson Wentz had a decent amount of injuries before he brought him in. Anthony Richardson had an injury history during his time at Florida, going back to when he was in high school. Andrew Luck had a tendency to get hurt, and so on. There's just something about Chris Ballard and quarterbacks that can't stay healthy that he just loves for some reason. He sees it as like this opportunity to get a bargain. Have you seen like the reels on Instagram where people buy a couch for like $20 and then they clean it and then they stain it or do something? Can you stain a couch? I don't know, but they do something to it. And then like a week later, it looks awesome. It looks awesome. I doubt the couch actually is, because you only paid $20 for it. And I think that Chris Ballard views quarterbacks the same way. And there's just certain things in life that you don't go cheap on and try to rebuild. Like a mattress. Like don't buy a used mattress and then, try and make it better by getting a nice bed frame. Just go buy a really nice one and things will go better for you. And the quarterback position is the same way. That's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show for today. We'll be back tomorrow, noon to 3. Dan Dockich is going to join the show at 12:30. We've got the best sports gambler on the planet joining the show at 1:30. My guy, Zach Gray. So if you want to make money, tune in tomorrow at 1:30. If you want to get smarter, tune in at 12:30. And if you just want to be entertained, tune in from noon to 3. We will talk to you